Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring and mentoring executives, frontline employees, and job seekers for nearly 40 years through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions, big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big job change. We all know transitions can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have actionable strategies and proven tactics to achieve the future you want. We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to your next great job. So if change is on your horizon, you won't want to miss this discussion. Also, please subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. David Buck, I am so excited about having the opportunity to speak with you today. This is really going to be a lot of fun and very useful information.
Honored to be here. And I love the People in Transition podcast because there are so much information I've gotten out of it as well. So honored to be here.
David, we're going to go a little bit different in terms of defining transitions today. And we've done a few episodes on this, but I'm really looking forward to your spin on it. We're going to talk about transitioning into retirement. The first question that someone that was listening to this might have is, David, what gives you the expertise or the skills or the knowledge that you can even talk about this topic?
I am my own customer, so to speak. I got to the point where I am in wanting to help people plan what I call a post-career lifestyle strategy through my own journey. I was blessed and fortunate enough that I have saved and invested well enough that I could retire today if I wanted to. And when my wife asked that question 2 years ago of our financial advisors and said, well, what if Dave retired today? And they gave us a green light. That hit me over the head a little bit to say, well, what would I do with that time? So I take the time management techniques I use in my business and I applied that on a personal journey and found that there were a lot of other people out there like me, I'm 59, who see retirement potentially on the horizon and say to themselves, what is that life going to be like? And through that personal journey and through my own work in the time management space, I felt I crafted a strategy that people could follow for crafting that lifestyle strategy of their own. And it's through that I created the Infinity Lifestyle Design.
And David, you talk about defining a purpose of their life. What does that mean and how do they go about doing that?
So purpose is the number one avenue I found. It was on my own personal journey, but also as I've worked with clients, that people's lives are so wrapped up in their career defining what they do. And that's not a criticism, that's just a reality. And so as I asked people, I said, well, what are you going to do if you take the career away? And in many times I got deer in the headlights looks because people hadn't thought about that. Also, when we meet new people, typically the first question or close to the first question is, what do you do for a living? Well, when you say you're retired, you will see the other person many times is saying, how can I disengage from this? So for me, the better answer to that is, let me tell you what my purpose is in life. So people craft their purpose by looking at themselves first internally. What are the strengths that you bring to the table? From that, you say, what's important to you from an ethical standpoint? What are the principles that guide you that way? And then the other aspects are, what are the goals you want to accomplish in life? And when you work those three in combination, I encourage my clients to craft what I call a purpose or vision statement like companies do. It's 1 or 2 sentences that becomes the North Star that helps you guide yourself forward as you plan the lifestyle you want to live.
David, that feels very uncomfortable, that self-reflection and setting up some kind of vision board or vision statement. And I think that doing that alone would be an uncomfortable experience. How do you coach your clients in terms of getting over that feeling, or maybe having someone join you in creating that purpose?
You hit the nail on the head there. This is something, whether you were to work with me directly or if you begin to craft it by yourself, is to find someone else to help you. And typically, if you have a spouse, a partner, significant other, that's the first and best place to start, because people are uncomfortable, particularly like, what am I good at? I know we all get a little uncomfortable sometimes having to think so positively about ourselves. So when you draw in others, whether it's that spouse, significant other, or a close friend or other family members, they get to provide you with many of the attributes that you have a hard time drawing out of yourself, which then can become the basis to craft that statement.
And you mentioned time management earlier. I'm lost, I guess, a little bit in terms of what are the time management challenges that people in post-career or retirement, what are they dealing with?
Great question. And first off, to tee up perspective, is that today, if someone works an average of a 40-hour-a-week job, that's 24% of the time that they spend, total time that they spend, is in their career. So when you step out from that, right then and there, you have what I call a time vacuum. You have 24% of your life, which is no longer structured. And so people can either very quickly go down what I call a time rabbit hole, where they very narrowly define what they want to do, and that continues to get smaller and smaller. Whereas I try to work with clients and coach people is to say, you now have all this extra time to plan, set up detailed lifestyle goals and strategies that are going to help you fill that time. It doesn't mean every hour of the day is filled, but you understand, when I wake up in the morning tied to what your purpose is, these are the goals then I want to accomplish tied to that purpose.
Can you give me, David, an example of goals that you've seen? It might spur me on to think about goals for myself.
So typical things that people do in retirement are, there's travel goals established. For example, my mother-in-law has had a goal to see as much of the world as she can, and I think she's been to 120 some countries. An example of a personal goal of mine, which my wife and I have been working on for 2 years, in 2024, I'm finally going to hike the Grand Canyon from rim to rim, from the top down to the Colorado River and up to the other top. And that's taken for us a couple of years to plan that out, for the resources and the timing to do that. So it's inevitably a lot of activities, which I call are aspirational, which you think are really, really neat and exciting, but you're like, oh, I'm never going to do that. Well, that needs to be part of your list, your vision or bucket list, and you work off of that. And sometimes it could take you years to complete, but you're dedicating productive time and resources to do that.
Any sense of how many people do you think in retirement, going into retirement, do this, make this purposeful life? Is it a minority, a majority? What would you guess?
So of the assessment tools that I use and the data that I collect directly, it's literally about 40% of the people have an active and robust strategy that they've planned who are in retirement. So there is a significant gap in what people's expectations of the life they want to live and how they're living it.
There's got to be some lifestyle challenges for people that are in post-career or in retirement. What are some of the big ones that you've seen?
So one of the things that people have a tendency to ignore early on, which impacts them much later on in their retirement, and this is the idea of setting a social network. Because when we're in career, think about how many people in your lives that you work with are tied to your career, whether it's your coworkers, clients, or any ancillary people that you come in contact with because of your career. Once you step over the threshold into retirement, then your social network immediately drops by half. And so you have now less people that you're going to become engaged with. So I really challenge people thinking about post-career life is to solidify solid relationships today. Define those people that are important to you in your life and pour yourself into them, not expecting anything in return. Now, most cases, they're going to give that back to you. But the purpose is that you have defined those people that are really important to you, that are going to be around for a long time. So you have a solid social network into your post-career life as it continues to shrink.
I think personally, I every day have 3, 4, 5, 6 people really working hard to get on my calendar. And the thought of a blank calendar for any extended period of time scares me. What would you coach me on that?
That is a huge component of where people lose the sense of tracking their time, because you're right, work brings us a natural structure and a full calendar. So I take my clients through an exercise where we plan a typical retirement week. And in lieu of copying and pasting or falling into the trap of the movie Groundhog's Day, where you wake up and it's the same day over and over again, it's a really challenging activity to do because you want to set your ideal week based upon a variety of activities to do instead of, well, I planned Monday, let me copy and paste that to Tuesday to Wednesday and all the way through the week. So taking that time to plan out what is a typical week for a person helps them determine and understand, I've got to think differently in order to fill that with meaningful and purposeful activities.
David, you talk about that people should estimate their lifespan in the lead up to retirement. Why is that important since it's such an arbitrary guess?
Yes, it is an arbitrary guess, and I have been criticized by people that this is a little bit morbid, and I don't mean it to be, but if you look at the average person who has taken an assessment tool that I have, where I ask them to calculate their longevity, it's 57 years old. They estimate on average their lifespan is going to be well into the 80s, sometimes close to 90. If you do the math there, then that says I'm going to spend maybe a third of my life in retirement, depending on when you choose to retire. And so it's really important that you evaluate that longevity to say, wow, I've got to figure out what am I going to do with 25 to 33% of my life, and how am I going to have that meaning when so much of that meaning could be defined by career. I also think it's important to calculate that longevity, particularly if you have a spouse or partner with you, because once you align those two and compare those calculations next to each other, somebody's going to be alone for a period of time. So as you work on your lifestyle strategy together, that helps you both prioritize to say, these are the things we definitely want to do together early in case something happens to one of us.
Well, let's talk about that couple's lifestyle planning. How should they do that together? What's your recommendation in terms of the work that they need to complete?
I feel that there has to be some independent study as well as working together. And I think it first starts with both couples, or each one in the couple goes through and defines their own personal goals, what's important to them, and they just list all that out. Then you come together, because I have worked with clients that have been married for decades. And when they get into the discussion about what's important to them, there are usually what I call oh hell moments, where one spouse looks at the other and says, oh hell, you're not doing that, or what do you mean you wanted to do this particular activity? So by doing it first and laying out everything you want, you come to the table with all your cards on the table, and you can have a very fruitful discussion from that.
And what have you seen in that couple's work that they have done when they come together? What have they overlooked? What have they forgot to address?
Typically, it involves the timing of when both want to exit the workforce. The other element is how much time do they actually want to spend together? And in some cases, couples, when they both go into retirement at the same time from careers together, they find that they weren't prepared to spend all that time together. So again, it talks about what are our shared goals together that we're going to invest time, but also what's our alone time together? What are the activities and things that maybe we want to do by ourselves that's important to us that doesn't necessarily have to have one or the other being drug along?
David, when we were preparing for this podcast, you had me take a retirement time analysis, and I have a report from you. Can you describe that to our listeners? What is this activity? What's the report going to tell me?
Thank you. So the RTA, or the retirement time analysis, is really a snapshot. It's meant to challenge people with questions and scenarios as you take the assessment that help you think outside of your traditional career life. And we do that through 6 different categories of career mindset, time management, retirement mindset, financial status, anticipated lifestyle, and then planned activities. And in each one of those categories, you self-evaluate and are provided with your assessment plus some recommendations behind that. To me, it's a foundational document that I use to help craft and work with my clients to help them craft their post-career lifestyle strategy.
And are there any biases, do you think, built into this survey? I mean, if I'm an East Coast person versus a West Coast person, an African American versus a white, are there anything that might sway this?
I have not seen any so far. I don't get into demographics specifically. I do age demographics and male, female, but I don't get into ethnicity. I haven't seen it, but one of the things I have found, and as I talk to people about this, is if you have a low self-assessment, like your career is really, really important to you, don't look at that as I scored low or I failed in a career mindset. I challenge back to say, maybe career is important to you and you have to have some element of that in a post-career life. Maybe you aren't going to go cold turkey into retirement. Maybe you can find a way to still have some sense of a career because it's important to you. So the report is there to challenge assumptions and to unpack those feelings, and there's not meant to be any judgment in it.
And as you know, David, when I took it and got the report back, the first thing I did was call you and say, I've never had a low score like this test that I just took. I must be failing at that. And you helped me see that all this is to give different perspectives on roadmaps going forward.
Correct. Another category, for example, financial status. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't want to manage people's portfolios, but I have a section on financial status in there because many people, while they live a life today when they have a career, there's a certain sense of flexibility. And some cases, you don't have to have the essence of a discipline when you head into a post-career life when it's not about income, it's about distribution of your portfolio. So I have questions designed in there to make you think about a retirement mindset in a financial status situation so that even if you, quote, score on the lower end of it, you may be financially fine. You just may need to tweak your behaviors before you head into post-career life so you can maximize the benefits of your portfolio.
There are a few lines in this report that I thought were particularly powerful, and I'd like to get your thoughts on them. One of them was under the current career mindset. And the line in the report of mine said, based on your answer, a career still seems important to you. Effort looks like it needs to be applied to find an inner peace about the relationship of your work and how that plays into retirement. Tell me what that's saying to me.
The inner peace to me is not about, I have to find inner peace about not working in retirement. That inner peace is to find what's the right level of flexibility that you want to find in your life that will allow you to pursue your personal interests with or without some level of work. And that's where I tell clients, it's okay if you want to work in retirement. Just know, are you going to be able to complete and have the flexibility to pursue personal interests that have been a part of your planning process? Also, in that dynamic, that inner peace, if you have a spouse or significant other, they need to be part of your inner peace, because you may say, my inner peace is to work 80 hours a week like I am right now. Well, your spouse or significant other might be saying, listen, I expected you to be devoting time for us to pursue personal interests.
Another line under current retirement mindset says, begin to commonly think about your life in retirement. This can allow you to look at it not as the end of the road, but just as a turn or change of direction. Prepare your psyche for the reality that it is to come to ensure you enjoy, shape, and control the experiences that are going to happen. What does that mean?
Well, if you look at stereotypical views of retirement, so open any particularly financial publication that shows retirement images, it's people usually on the beach. It's somebody sitting around a table with their friends, always smiling, looks like they're having this amazing time. That can be elements of retirement, but that's not a true picture of retirement, because retirement is populated with all the experiences that we have in life. So I challenge people to say, break the stereotypical retirement mindset that says, gosh, if I'm not playing pickleball, then life is just not meaningful. The idea behind it is for you to define your own sense of purpose and meaning that then brings you joy around a strategy that you're excited about. So that's what retirement is defined for you personally.
A last line in the report, David, that I thought was interesting. It says, Bob, while one part of life is changing or has altered, your efforts should be to try and think of living as the beginning or the execution of something else or different. Your retirement mentality can afford you to want to evaluate and adjust to maintain a lively and vigorous world around you. What's that telling me?
So I live in a 55 plus community. I'm surrounded by a lot of retirees, and I see people who embrace retirement and are very, very active and are sometimes, when you go to talk to them, too busy, I'm headed to my next activity. I also unfortunately see the other side of retirement, where I have neighbors very close to me who have chosen to socially isolate themselves. So much so that I look for their garbage cans every week just to make sure that there's activity in the house. So in that case, you can very easily find yourself in either world. The difference is how people continuously adapt and change their life. Because as we get older in retirement, we're not going to be able to do as much things as we can in the younger stages of our retirement. And so we need to continually adapt lifestyles and strategies to reflect that. For example, my mother-in-law, who's in her 80s, we are challenging her to write her life story so that while she can't do active things, she has a purpose to define and help the rest of the future generations of our family understand what was important to her in her life. So things like that can adapt and adjust as we get older.
You mentioned earlier that you're not a financial advisor, but you do suggest making certain that your financial advisor plays a role in that post-career lifestyle planning. How should I incorporate my financial advisor into my plans?
That's a great question. And for me, actually, I am very hesitant to take on a new client if they do not have a financial advisor or planner. I realize there are some DIY financial people who manage their own portfolios very, very well. Wonderful if that's you. But for the vast majority of us, we need that expertise, because if you craft this amazing lifestyle strategy that says, yeah, I'm going to cruise 4 months out of the year and I'm going to buy a mountain chalet in Switzerland, and you present that plan to your financial advisor and they're going, I don't know where the resources are at, but this isn't happening. It's important to me that you work in conjunction, whatever your strategy or plan is, with your financial advisor, that you talk about the life you want to live, because then they can turn around and help you make sure the portfolio delivers to the life that you hope to lead.
What do you tell people, and this could be me, I don't think I'm ever going to retire?
I hear that question very frequently. And my response to that generally is wonderful. There's no reason why you have to stop working if after you self-evaluate and look at your life and say, this is really what I want to do. Great. However, understand this, at some point, you're going to come up against both physical and cognitive and energy challenges in the ability to perform at a level and a function that you are now. And in many cases, or statistically saying, the vast majority of us are not going to die on the day that we're working. Something else is going to happen. So still, you need to be prepared with a plan B that says, what if I physically can't work or cognitively can't work? Then what's my lifestyle strategy after that?
David, you've talked about a lot of really upsides in terms of retirement. Describe some of the downsides that you've seen.
There are many, and there are various aspects we need to be mindful of. The first one is disconnected from society, and that what I call the reduction in the social network. We are all relational people. I'm a high introvert, by the way. My natural default is to have quiet time, but I also understand too much quiet time is bad. We all need social interactions. So that's one. A second one is actually people who don't plan a good lifestyle strategy suffer from depression. Depending on the survey, it's anywhere from a third to 40% of retirees experience some form of depression, and some it's clinical. They are stuck with it because they just don't like the life that they're living. And then another element and aspect to it tied to depression is 10% of retirees suffer from some form of substance abuse, whether it's alcoholism or drug addiction. So those can become a very realistic part of someone's life if they don't have a lifestyle strategy in place.
David, when do you think that if you're pre-retiree, when is it right to start planning? And what is the support that you should seek to help you in that planning process?
So I try to not put an age factor on that time frame. I say more about what is your financial advisor telling you about your portfolio? And the reason why I say that is I typically work with people in their 50s. And if I had to say if that's a good time to start, early 50s to mid 50s, it's a good time to start. But you can start earlier if you have been a robust investor and you got a good portfolio. The reason why I say is start earlier, because I go back to the word flexibility. The idea of what I call post-career life is embracing as much flexibility as you can. And so you'll find if you develop a lifestyle strategy and your financial advisor says, portfolio looks pretty good here, I have said to clients, then why wait? Career is something you can be flexible with, and you have the resources to go forward. You don't have to wait.
David, are there any books or other resources that you would recommend to our listeners as they might be planning for their own retirement?
Sure. I've got three resources that I would recommend. The first one is a book called Outlive. It's by Peter Attia. Outlive is a great resource that works around the amazing things that are happening both in technology, but also how people, when they take care of themselves, their life expectancy goes up significantly. So Outlive's a great resource. I actually have a book called The Time Optimized Life, which is coming out next year. You can pre-order that now. The Time Optimized Life seeks to flip the script on time management as being a reactive way of life to time optimization, which is a proactive way of managing your time. And then finally, I've got my weekly newsletter. You can find that on my website, infinitylifestyledesign.com. And every week I come out with resources and information tied to a successful post-career life.
David, we have covered so much great information and ideas. If our listeners remember only three things as they are doing their own planning for retirement, what are those three things you want them to take away?
So the first one is this idea of gaining enough flexibility in your life. And so that retirement's doesn't have to be this cutoff, but what are you doing to establish a solid and firm, flexible life, no matter your age? The second is define your purpose. What do I want to do in life that ties back to my ultimate purpose? And then the third aspect is establish a robust goal strategy system, one that picks aspirational goals down to short-term goals that you can adapt and adjust as you go along.
David Buck, I personally learned a number of things today and in my other conversations with you. I'm sure that my listeners will as well. And I want to thank you for sharing all this great information. I really appreciate it.
Bob, it has been an honor. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I've had a good time because the time has flown by.
Thank you for listening. We're working in unprecedented times. The purpose of these episodes is to give you the support and critical tools to adjust with the changing marketplace. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully survived their own obstacle course and can share useful information. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on your social media. Your review and rating helps get this to more people. Also, if you have questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode.